Hello guys, welcome to Gentlemanly. This is Troy Francis. It's been a little while, but it's good to be back. For those of you who don't know me, as I said, my name is Troy Francis. I am the author of 11 books about dating and so on, and mentor to thousands of guys all over the planet. For over 20 years, I've coached thousands of guys through dating, seduction, and self-mastery. This podcast isn't about tricks. It's about truth, presence, and staying dangerous long after most men fade. So let's get into it. This is episode 1. Welcome to Gentlemanly. So I just wanted to come on and really intro this and just give you an idea of what the new direction is. Gentlemanly is not only a podcast, which is this, which is going to run Monday to Fridays, okay? Most weeks, unless I'm traveling or something. And so you can expect new episodes to drop. We plan to record it as video, so you can watch it, but it's also going to go on the audio platforms as well, Spotify and the other podcast platforms. So the purpose of this really is to resurrect the old style podcast that I used to do back in the day. And I think it's really useful because for myself, I know that I tend to listen to quite a lot of things on audio, and I find it really useful. You know, if I'm traveling, I'm going to the gym, all that kind of thing. And I focused a lot on video over the last few years, which has been great. And I don't intend to jettison that entirely, but I think an audio component is helpful, and I think it's lacking, and certainly in the way that we're going to do things over here at Gentlemanly. So what is this about? Well, this really is an evolution of the Troy Francis content. So we're not moving away from the whatever Troy Francis entity that you've loved or you've liked or you've tolerated or you've hated over the years. We're not moving so far away from that, but we are refining it and we are sharpening the direction of it, okay? We're maturing as a brand, if you like. And that's why I've called this Gentlemanly, because I want to draw a line in the sand, really, and talk about the things that we talk about, which for the uninitiated are, largely dating, relationships, romance, male-female dynamics, but also power dynamics socially in general, the way that people relate to one another, psychology, mindset. I want to talk about all of that stuff, but in a somewhat more sophisticated way than perhaps we've done in the past, and certainly more than other people in this space do. Because when you look at the men's dating advice space, what you tend to get is some bloke in a tank top with a bunch of tattoos, talking about how many women he slept with, and it's very crude, it's very vulgar. It appeals to a certain type of audience, I suppose, but that's not really the audience that I seek, and I don't think it's the audience that I serve best. The guys that tend to come to me for help when we do in-person training or even training remotely over Zoom or whatever, they tend to be pretty intelligent, intellectual, articulate, well put together guys. They tend to be guys who are a little bit older, so 35 plus. This isn't closed off. If you're under 35, I'm not saying don't watch, but I'm just saying that, generally speaking, because I'm older, the guys that I work with tend to be a little bit on the older side. They tend to be quite well established in their careers. They tend to be very, as I say, intelligent and analytical, but there's something lacking in the way that they relate to other people, and specifically women, and that's why they come to me. And they come to me as well, I think, because they resonate with something in the manner in which I talk about this stuff. All right, I don't think there are many content creators who are talking about this stuff in an intelligent way and in a thoughtful, quasi-philosophical way. I mean, me and James Tusk, when we get together and we do our conversations, people really buy into that. They really like that. And I think that's because, firstly, we're raw and we're honest and we don't hold back. And secondly, because it's not just, okay, here's 6 tips to talk to a girl in a coffee shop. It's much more nuanced than that. It's much deeper than that. And it's much more about the mindset aspects of it, okay? And I think those things are really important. That's not to say that gentlemanly won't include actionable tips and actionable advice. So if you're new to this kind of content and you're just sitting there thinking, oh, well, this is all great, but I just want to find a girlfriend or I want to find a wife, don't worry, we've got you covered. We will be talking about those tactical things as well. And I want to introduce at least a couple of actionable points into each episode, okay, to ensure that you go away with something that you can actually use. But for the podcast itself, which, as I say, at the moment we're looking at a daily drop, Monday to Friday. So it's something that you can listen to on your way to work or in the gym or when you're out going for a walk or whatever it is. We want to get into the weeds a little bit with some of this stuff. And there's good reason for that, because so much of this stuff is mindset, okay? You've got, it's like the difference between strategy and tactics, okay? So, in war, you've got strategy and then you've got tactics. So the tactics might be, right, we're going to deploy a certain number of troops over here, they're going to have these weapons, and they're going to try to recapture this piece of land or whatever it is, okay? That's the tactical side of things. But then there's the strategy, which is the greater meta planning, if you like. And we want to, on Gentlemanly, talk a bit about both, but the strategy side of things is very important. And within strategy, I would say, comes things like mindset and psychology and how you view yourself and how you view the world. Because a lot of the time with guys, that's really what's messed up. Because, as I said, a lot of the men that I work with are, on paper, at least, you would think, should be getting absolutely stellar results in the dating marketplace. And the fact that they're not is, A, an indictment of the current dating marketplace and the difficulties therein, but B, indicates that they're on the right track, but there are certain tweaks that need to be made. And those tweaks are more mental than they are tactical, really. They're more strategic than they are tactical, because the tactical side of things, there's a girl in the bar, she's wearing a red dress, she looks pretty, go up and talk to her and see if you can get her phone number, is not very difficult. You could learn that stuff in an afternoon, really, probably less, if you Googled it, if you watched a few videos. The how-to side of things is pretty straightforward and it's been done to death. The other side of things, which is the more strategic side of things, has been talked about, but I don't believe it's been talked about with any great intelligence or any great insight. And that's what I bring to the party, and that is what Gentlemanly is all about. And of course, with a name like Gentlemanly, this can incorporate so much more than just how to meet a girl in a coffee shop or how to meet a girl in a nightclub. I mean, yes, that's the bread and butter, so we will be talking about those things, but we want to be talking, as I say, about psychology. We want to be talking about style, okay? We want to be talking about fitness. We want to be talking about lifestyle to some extent, where you spend your time. Do you go to 5-star hotels in exotic countries, right? Where are cool places to go? Where are good places to go on a mini break with a girl that you're dating, okay? All of these kinds of things we can start to bring into the fold, because it's not just about, okay, so I'm going to learn some lines and then I'm going to get really good with girls and then all of my romantic problems will be solved. Because, as I've always said, the game, the lines, the things that you say, the things that you do, those are your marketing, okay? That's how you market yourself. But you and your lifestyle are the product. And if the product is no good, then the marketing might work for a short period of time, but then she's going to see through it and she's going to say, hang on a minute, the marketing reeled me in, but the product isn't that great, so maybe I want to go and get another product, okay? So lifestyle is important, and I'm not saying I'm going to try and turn this into some lifestyle brand, because I'm not, but I think sprinkling a bit of that in is important, and also showing you a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff of the way that I live my life, the things that I do, okay? Because like last year, for example, I went to some really cool places. Like we stayed in a fantastic hotel in Dubai. I stayed in one of the best hotels in Paris. Where else? You know, I've traveled around. I've been to Albania, stayed at a great hotel in Albania. I was in Moldova. I was in Miami. I mean, I've been to so many cool places, and I think one of the faults as a content creator is that I don't really showcase that enough. Where I do showcase it is on Instagram. I try to put at least a few pictures on Instagram and sort of showcase the places that I've been to, but perhaps not enough. So a little bit more emphasis on that and the way that I would conduct a date, the way that I would dress, you know, the scent that I would use. Maybe we can talk about watches, the finer things in life, okay? And this is not to go down the route of sugar daddy dating or anything like that, but the truth of the matter is that lifestyle counts, right? Girls want to have fun, and part of having fun, you know, particularly for certain higher quality types of girls, is, you know, what restaurant are you going to? What's the service like? What's the standard of the food? Is it Michelin starred? All of these kinds of things, right? So again, I don't want to overemphasize the significance of those things, because ultimately your command of yourself, your ability to influence is the most important component here. But let's not pretend like it's 2004 that the lifestyle stuff doesn't matter, because it really does, as well as fitness, as well as the way you look, as well as the way you groom yourself, and so on and so forth. So gentlemanly, really, it's not about politeness. It's not about being politically correct. It's about being present, precise, and having poise under pressure. Because believe me, the dating marketplace is the most pressured that it's ever been. You are going to suffer pressure both from women and your interactions with women, but also from work, from the encroachment of AI, the geopolitical situation that's unfolding around us. Okay, there's a lot of different levers that are being pulled at the moment that are going to have an effect on your life. And what we want to seek to be is essentially stoic, really. I mean, Stoicism gets talked about quite a lot in this space, but with good reason. Because what is more powerful, what is more masculine than being able to maintain poise under pressure, okay? Super, super important, and super, super attractive if you can get it right. So why am I doing this now? Well, I've had over 20 years in the trenches, and actually, if I'm being completely honest, it's really longer than that. I say 20 years because 20 years is about the period of time since I learned about what we used to call game, which is now a term that I find a little bit cliched, a little bit old hat, I suppose. A lot of the old terminology, game, sets, rating people by numbers, negs, I mean, good God, peacocking, you know, all of the old terminology, it rankles me a little bit, because for a start, it's all like 20 odd years old. It's boomer language, really. And I say that as more or less a boomer myself, but it is incredibly old fashioned. And it makes something that should be very natural and very normal, which is going and communicating with other human beings, seem like this really weird, strange thing. Okay, so I don't like the terminology. I sometimes use it as shorthand because people know what I mean, but I would rather pull away from it. So yeah, I mean, so 20 years in the trenches since I learned about that stuff. Okay, I read The Game by Neil Strauss, like many people did, which came out in about 2005. So it is like literally 20 years. But even before that, I had another 10 years actually in the trenches when I was living in Manchester in the UK for a lot of that period. I was at university there, and then I stayed. I was going to clubs. I was meeting different girls. I was untutored. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand male-female dynamics. I didn't really understand female psychology or indeed my own psychology, quite frankly. So it was a bit of a car crash, but the one thing that I did do was that I approached a lot, and I had girlfriends there, I had lovers there, I had some, you know, great experiences there and some very bad experiences there. So really, as much as what it says on the tin is 20 years in the trenches, it's actually really 30 years, but 20 years of sort of tutored knowledge, if you like, where I started to apply some of the lessons of people like Eric, who's better known as Mystery, and some of those early guys, and some of the things I learned on forums and stuff like that. And that added some science to what I was doing in my dating world. So we can call it 20 years in the trenches. But now, as I've said or intimated previously, it's a shift from tactics to truth, okay? Tactics to truth. So what do I mean by that? Well, tactics are when you see the girl, go over within 3 seconds and say, oh, hello, you look really nice. One thing I noticed about you was. All right, that's a tactic to open a conversation. And it's not that we're going to forego that entirely. We can talk about this stuff, okay? By the way, there's an accompanying blog on Substack, which is also called Gentlemanly, where we'll be releasing an article every week. And if you sign up to one of the paid tiers, then there'll be a Q&A sessions in there, or certainly the ability to ask questions and have them answered. So if you want tactics, they're all here. We've got them. We will be covering them. But it's more about truth. It's more about the truth of, okay, what is the reality of the current dating scene? What is the reality of the way that men and women interact? What is the reality of being a guy who's getting a bit older and is considering his options? You know, I know some of you guys out there are maybe, like me, or in your late 40s or 50s, and you've never been married for one reason or another. I know there's others who have been married, and maybe you're still married but you're not happy, or maybe you're divorced, okay? And then what do you do? Because then you come out the other side and there's this completely alien dating market where it's like stepping out into the Matrix or something. There's this entirely different vibe going on. And Gentlemanly is here to help support you. Now, if it happens that you are younger, I've said 35, it's a slightly arbitrary cutoff point. If you are a bit younger, but you need help with this stuff, this is still going to apply to you too. So don't worry, please subscribe and, support the channel and so on and so forth. But it's because of my age and because of my experience, I guess I'm talking slightly more to that older age group, but all are welcome here, don't worry. And even if you're a lady, even if you're a woman and you want to watch this just to get a male perspective, you too are absolutely welcome. We don't want any misogyny here. This isn't about, manosphere rage bait and trying to tear down the other gender and all that kind of stuff, because quite frankly, well, it lacks class for a start, let's be honest. But secondly, it's completely pointless. All right, it's completely pointless and an absolute waste of your time to get butthurt about what women may or may not do. All right, people are going to do what they're going to do. You can't control other people's actions. The only thing that you can control is your own actions and the way that you react to things, okay? That's what we've got to concentrate on. So if you ask a woman out on a date and she ghosts you or she says no, there's no sense, there's no value in getting butthurt about it and calling her names and, sending her a rude text message or something like that. What's that going to achieve? It's nothing, okay? Don't hate the player, hate the game. Is that right? You know what I'm saying? You can't, some guys get very butthurt about this stuff and it's just not productive. It's not helpful. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help anybody else. So who is this for? Well, we've kind of covered that already. Broadly speaking, I would say men aged 35 plus. If you're younger, still welcome, no problems. But people who are intelligent, who want to talk about this stuff in an intelligent way and who are tired of just fluff and trickery and sort of crude channels where guys are going on about lay counts and all this kind of bollocks, which is, at the very least, I would say, lacking in class. Okay, and look, I'm an English man of a certain age. I have a certain aesthetic taste. You can see from this. And I quite like things to be classy, to be honest. And that predilection has asserted itself more and more as I've gotten a little bit older. Like I don't really want to be running a channel that lacks class. I don't want to be running a channel where it's talking about 304s and all of this kind of stuff. I just don't really want to do it. It's just not me. Okay. Plus, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that gets said by some of those people, and I just don't think it's productive. And ultimately, here's what it comes down to. This stuff has got to be productive for you, all right? It's got to be actionable for you, all right? And in my view, one of the most important things in all of this is that you don't get angry at women. You don't get butthurt. You don't get pissed off. And that's not coming from some ethical kind of woke agenda perspective. It's coming from the simple fact that it's not going to do you any favors, okay? If anything, it's going to damage you. Revenge is a resentment rather, is a terrible, terrible ailment that eats us up inside. And you just don't need it in your life. It's not going to make anything any better. It's really not. It really isn't. So we want to steer clear of that. As I say, not because I'm some woke, leftist, liberal kind of crazy person. Somebody accused me of being a liberal on Twitter the other day, and or on some platform, and I said, well, no, actually, if anything, I'm a Randian objectivist. Okay, that is to say, I'm an individualist. I believe in the individual, and I believe in an almost Darwinian political arrangement. Not really a topic for now, but just out of interest. So it's, as I say, this isn't coming from a sort of liberal perspective or anything like that. It's coming from a very pragmatic perspective, which is that resentment will fuck you over. And if you have addictive tendencies, if you've ever been into recovery, you will know that resentment is the number one offender. They tell us that pretty much every meeting that you go to, if you go to 12-step meetings. So what this is not for, okay, so this is not for pickup artists, I'm sorry, this is not for manosphere rage baiters, this is not for soft skill panderers, okay? This is for people who are a class above. Is it snobbish to say that? Yeah, probably. Am I a bit of a snobbish guy? Yeah, probably. I like the theatre, I like the opera, I like classical music, I like literature, I like great songwriting, I like great song lyrics. I like to go to museums, I like to go to historic cities. I will tolerate places that they're designed for partying, like Dubai or Ibiza or things like this. I'm fine, great, I've had some great times in those places. But really, would I rather be in Rome? Would I rather be in Paris? Would I rather be in London? Would I rather be in Barcelona or somewhere with historical, significance? Yes, absolutely I would, okay? So we're looking for people to join this community, and it will become a community, and I'm going to explain more about how that's going to happen in subsequent editions of this, but it is going to become a community. And we're looking for people who, they want to learn the skills, they want to be effective, but they don't want to be a low IQ douchebag. Quite frankly, we want people who are comfortable sitting in the lobby in the Bulgari Hotel having a nice cup of tea. And engaging in that kind of atmosphere. We're not looking for people who want to have tattoos on their neck of how many women they've slept with and that kind of thing. It's just vulgar. It's classless. It's not cool. What do we expect moving forward? Okay, so this has been a bit of an introductory episode, so I'll probably keep this relatively short. But going forward, stories, philosophy, seduction, self-mastery, and mythic masculinity, okay? That is making yourself the myth version of yourself, okay? The hero's version of yourself. So I want to get pretty raw on these podcasts, because what I've noticed from many years now of content creation, probably about a decade of content creation, what I've recognized is that the more raw that I get and the more confessional that I get, the more engagement there is from you guys. Okay? And certainly in my writing, some of the best engagement I ever had in my entire career, if you want to call it that, doing this, was from back in the day when I was writing for Return of Kings. Some people may remember that. And I was writing for, my own blog, and I would write pretty much daily articles. And people would really resonate with them. Now, it helped at the time that I was anonymous. So that's why I came up with the name Troy Francis, because I was able to hide behind an alias and nobody knew who I was. There was no pictures of me. There was no videos. So I could write what I wanted. And, it wasn't that I was writing this outrageous, horrendous stuff, but I was being very honest. Now, when you become somewhat public, as I have, because obviously I show my face, that presents problems. Or it can present problems in your life, because you have girlfriends, you have relatives, you have friends, you have people that kind of half know you who watch this stuff, and they're going to have an opinion. But in the end, that's my problem. It's not your problem. And as I said, what I found is that the more raw I can be in these pieces of content, whether it's a video or an audio podcast, or whether it's a written essay, the more raw, the more vulnerable, the more truthful I can be, the more it seems to touch you guys, and the more that you get out of it. And it's surprising how it works, because I remember the last time that I had some pretty big hits with some videos that got a lot more views than I would normally get on my channel was when I was making a lot of quite depressing videos about, I'd split with my girl and I was feeling very down and directionless about relationships and things. And I made some pretty introspective videos, and, from a sales perspective, they were terrible, because it's really hard to make a video like that and then go, hey guys, come on a boot camp, or whatever. But from a views perspective and an engagement perspective, they were, really, really, guys really cottoned onto them and really, really felt it. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that support. And, it also shows me the roadmap, really, which is that I have to be vulnerable. I have to tell it like it is. Okay, and that doesn't mean I give people's names away or I give specific details about people away, but I have to talk about the emotions and how living the lifestyle I have lived to this point has affected me. All right, I have to do that. That's my job. And any blowback in my personal life that I get from that, I have to absorb that, because that is also part of my job. That's not your problem. That's my problem. Okay, so that's what I'm going to seek to do on this. But as I say, stories, obviously we're going to be talking about dating. So I'm going to drop this as early in the morning as I can. Obviously I'm in the UK most of the time, so there's going to be I guess it's good for people in the States, because it'll probably come out quite early for you guys. But if you get into this and you like it, it could be the kind of thing you could listen to in the morning, in the gym or on your way to work. And I will be looking to drop in some nuggets, some actionable nuggets into it as well. But, we'll be telling stories. We'll be talking about things that have happened and the effect that that's had on me. And hopefully you can avoid some of the pitfalls that I've fallen into, and you can, not make some of those same mistakes, and you can benefit from some of the wisdom that I've gleaned along the way. So, call to arms, really. I'm not getting any younger, and that's a good thing. I don't really care. I care. I mean, of course I care, but I mean, it doesn't matter. I feel as vital and as energetic as I did when I was in my 20s and early 30s, to be quite honest. And I feel in a better place in my life. I feel like my skill set, as far as certainly talking, as far as communicating is concerned, which is obviously essential to the job that I do, is at its highest peak ever. I feel the experiences I've had over my entire life, and particularly in the last few years, coaching guys all over the planet. You know, I just came back from Rio. I was in Moldova. I was in Warsaw before that. I mean, just all over the place, working with different guys in different scenarios. There's so much knowledge here that I can bring to you about how the current dating marketplace is, how guys approach it, what they do wrong, and what you can do right. There's loads and loads of stuff that I can share with you, and I believe that this format is going to be a good way to do it. And I think the audio component is really important. So I know that I've been doing a lot of the videos of me walking around town, you know, holding the camera and talking into the camera, and people like those. And I'm not saying I'm not going to continue doing those. I'm going to have a think about it. We'll see. I might drop some of those in as well. But I do believe that doing this and having it on the audio channels is a good thing, because I certainly consume content on audio that I wouldn't necessarily just be sitting around watching the video, right? So Alex Hormozy is one, for example. There's some other podcasts I listen to. And yes, they record them. They'll record them like this. You can see him sitting there talking, but I don't necessarily watch it. I just turn the video off and I just listen to the audio. I think that's a good thing to do. I'm hoping that it's going to be beneficial for you guys, and we can grow this thing, okay? We can grow this thing, and we can start a mini movement of people who, yes, we want to talk about this stuff, but we don't want to be toxic, and we don't want to be angry, and we don't want to blame women for absolutely everything. And I'm not saying women, you know, I'm not saying women are these innocent, unique angels. Obviously they're not. But what value is there to any of us of getting angry? Zero. Okay? We have to conduct our lives in a manner which is going to yield us the best results that we can get. And that is really what it comes down to. And you can't argue with nature anyway. You can't get angry about somebody following their biological imperatives, which is really all that women are doing, and men as well. So there it is. Most men fade as they get a bit older. I don't intend to. This is about remaining vital, sharp, and dangerous as far as your ability to maneuver the dating marketplace is concerned anyway. So I hope you enjoyed this first edition of the Gentlemanly podcast. If you've got any thoughts or comments, please email me, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, or leave a comment below on whatever platform you're listening to this on or watching this on. And I'll see you guys very soon. Bye-bye.